Hello beautiful starting out solitary witches, I'm Avalon and I am filling in for Michael and the Deviant Witches, I believe. They are a team. Now the subject for this particular video is travel altars. Yay! Okay, so some things to consider before approaching your task of assembling a travel altar is space. Of course, space is probably one of the most important things, because if you are traveling by, say, car, train, bus, you're going to have a certain amount of space available to you, and you know, in some instances you'll have more, in some instances you'll have less, depending on your personal circumstance. But if you're traveling by plane, you are going to be further restricted by what you can take on board a plane. And so decide firsthand what kind of space you have to work with, what kind of bag you are taking, what kind of, you know, luggage you have at your disposal, and then decide exactly what you are able to take in keeping with your limitations in space. Another important thing to consider is, of course, security, quarantine, things of that nature. Now, if you're traveling internationally or if you're traveling across borders, there will be certain things that you will not be able to take into, say, a country or a state, and that is worth paying attention to. Likewise, if you are going via plane, you will not be allowed to take flammables and certain substances, certain herbs, certain things that trigger a particular quarantine in a particular country, state or region that you are going to. So try and suss all of that out before you start to assemble a travel altar. Once you have thought carefully on both of those things, then you can make your decision as to whether or not you are going to go three-dimensional objects in smaller versions, or if you are going to go more one-dimensional objects with a shit ton of magic attached to it. I'm going to show you some of the three-dimensional objects that I like to take around with me when I'm not so restricted by space. This innocent little candle is a soy candle, and it is spring-loaded with this awesome lid, and there's that rubber seal. So I can light this candle, use it, and then if I need to leave straight away or if I need to go quickly, I can put this lid on, knowing full well that the wax that has been melted during the use is not going to spill out everywhere. So it's a bit of a practical approach. And it's a smaller candle. Usually I like to use larger candles, but it is a smaller candle, and I have made this one myself specifically for the purpose of taking out and about with me. The second thing that I like to pack when I'm going out and about is this beautiful altar cloth that I purchased while I was in Brazil. The words are in Portuguese, in case you were wondering. And it's a representation of the four element, the fifth being spirit. It's got the pentacle, and of course it has the triple moon aspect to it. And that makes a great little surface. It's also malleable, so you can roll other things in it and create yourself a nice little bundle, which is always really handy. Of the crystals that I have available at my disposal, I always take one stone, and that is Isis. That's my channeling crystal, and Isis comes with me whether or not I'm going on a short trip or a long trip. It is one of those stones that I'm very bonded to, in the sense of my practice, and it exudes such beautiful magic. So I am very kindred with Isis, and she comes with me. For the element of water, to represent the element of water on my travel altar, I will take these little vials here. These are upcycled vials. I tend to really like things like bush flower remedies, and so this is one of my bush flower essential remedies. And when it's finished, I just peel the label off and I fill it with water that I've collected from a sacred spring, and I'll bring it along with me. It's got a great little droplet, and it works a treat, and it's fully sealed, and I don't get the hassle of spillages and things of that nature. Depending on how you like to represent the element of air, you can always take a feather And feathers, of course, come in all shapes and sizes, so you're not really restricted. You can get itty-bitty ones and you can get nice large ones as well. If you prefer to represent air through smoke of incense, then two rather good options are smaller smudge bundles. This is a cedar and sage one, or Palo Santo. Palo Santo, I think, is actually better because it doesn't stay lit. It's a little safer to travel with for that regard, whereas burning dry matter like a smudge bundle requires you to sometimes butt it out to smother it so that it doesn't continuously burn. And that can be a bit of a hassle depending on what kind of a setup you're requiring. So I like to take Palo Santo with me. It's easy to use, it doesn't stay lit, it produces a fantastic aroma, it is holy wood, so it really elevates the energy in the space. And of course, once it's out, I can wrap it up and just go. You may also like to represent the elements using the wonderful World of Tarot, the World card, all elemental influences therein. You have the 10 of Cups that can represent a lot of joy with water. The aces represent the quintessence of the elements that they represent, and so you could, sift out all of the aces from a tarot deck and have them placed in directional corners to assist you in ritual. There's a few options that you can take there, and of course, if you're doing a ritual in alignment with a particular goal, then there will always be a card within the tarot that can help you to amplify that goal a little bit more. This is the Shadowscapes Tarot by Barbara Moore and Ali Fell, in case you were wondering. So we've looked at representations of earth, air, fire, water for a travel altar, and of course the altar cloth, which also has representations of earth, air, fire, water. So together they make a nice little combination that can be quite effective when creating ritual in a travel situation. But of course, they are three-dimensional objects, and if you are restricted by space, then you may want to go lateral, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So if you are restricted by space, then going one-dimensional is sometimes the best and most creative option. So this here, this surface right here, is a piece of Strathmore mixed media paper, and it handles a lot. It handles a lot of pigment, a lot of water, and you can build beautiful art on top of it, right? It can come in this size, which is quite large, or smaller pieces, and of course you're open to cutting it. You can cut it up into as many pieces as you like, depending on your need. But this becomes a fantastic foundation, this paper specifically, for a travel altar. Now, the same principles that I'm going to outline for this particular paper can also be applied to a book. If you have a book, say of Tomo River paper, or you have a great book or a journal, you can actually turn your journal into a travel altar with some of the techniques that I'm about to discuss here. A good thing about paper is that you can get really creative with it, and you can prime it or prep it using the elements, using sacred waters, using earth, dirt, herb, crystal, incense, smoke, you name it, you can utilize it. You can apply it to that page, and that page will absorb the energies of those elements. So to prep a page is actually an act of magic in and of itself, and to be able to take a paper type altar with you, a living art piece with you to use as an altar, a travel altar, is incredibly beautiful. Once you have prepped your page, then you will want to decide on the kind of media that you use. You might want to use inks, you might want to use watercolor pencils, gel pens, acrylic inks, you name it. There is opportunity there, pan pastels in the background, but one of my favorite things to use, particularly for sealing herbs onto paper, is this bad boy here, which is Liquitex matte medium. It seals, it glues, it does it all, and so it's a staple. Another medium that I like to use is Daniel Smith Primatech Extra Fine Watercolors. They are made of ground crystals. And so you're taking the essence of the crystal with you when you are creating your surface, which is freaking magical, guys. It's freaking magical. And the pigments are very, very good. Daniel Smith do the best watercolors, in my opinion. They are very rich in pigment, and the fact that they do use stones to create their pigments, their paint, their watercolor, it's just too good to be true, really, when you think about it. And it looks phenomenal on paper. Now this here is a living art spell. It is a piece of Strathmore moonstone paper that I have primed. I have used a base of color in accordance with some of the energies that I wanted to bring in, and I've created a canvas in which I have put sigils and runes and Reiki symbols and herbs. So if I take you nice and close, you'll be able to see the herb there that I have added to the page, and the wax is up here. This is actually candle wax through here, and this was all steeped in water. Look at all this herb, all steeped in water, all sealed, and all imbued with energy. If you choose to go the creative way, utilizing paper, then there is so much that you can do with it. You can incorporate color magic into it, sigil magic, herb magic, candle magic, crystal magic, air magic, you name it. You can infuse so many different elemental flavors into that particular creative task, and then take all of that energy with you when you travel. And you're not restricted by space. You can fold your paper. You can make it small enough so that it's not something that really sticks out, so you can just tuck it into your journal if you are a journaler and you like to take journals with you when you travel. And so these are really, really great options. And I happen to love using paper altars, specifically because I can take some of the earth that I live amongst and some of the water that I swim in, and the elemental influences that I love to use. I can take them with me, and when I'm there, I can integrate with my environment better by then adding aspects of the environment in which I'm in at that time. So I can smush a little bit of dirt, I can smush a little bit of available candle or water energy or whatever it is that's available to me in my natural environment that I have traveled to. So these are things to consider, because you can always add to paper. You can always add more energy to it. You can always sit there and charge it up. You can create new sigils onto it. You can imbue it with a purpose. You can leave it open and just have, strong elemental influences on there to just hold space for you while you're doing your rituals, while you're out and about. Now, I know that a lot of people like to use teeny tiny little tin altars. I fucking hate that shit. I hate it. It's too small, and yes, it's space saving and everything, but it doesn't allow me what I want. It doesn't allow me to put the energy that I want into a task. And so going paper and going that book style that I've previously mentioned are great options if you are trying to save space. And of course, if you do have space, then why not just take a few smaller three-dimensional objects to help you create a sense of ritual wherever you go. And there you have it, travel altars. Do not be restricted. Use your creativity. Instead of using paper, use fabric. Instead of using fabric, use paper. If you'd like to use neither, then just shove everything into a tiny little tin if that's your cup of tea. It's not mine, but it might be your cup of tea. And if you have the space, then just take smaller objects out and about with you. I oftentimes adorn coven altars, or assist to adorn coven altars, and I take a whole basket worth of, witchy ephemera with me. And that's because I have the space to do so. And so I can be a bit bigger in that regard. And I'm also collaborating in the creation of sacred space with other people, because we all bring a little something to the altar in that regard, specifically when we're doing coven work. But if it's just you and you have the space, then take beautiful things out in nature and create a beautiful sacred space for yourself. And lastly, if you feel like you do not need an altar, then go with that. Go with that soul calling. You do not need an altar unless you absolutely feel like you need to. Some people love to work by altar. Other people like to be free. And if you want to get really ultra philosophical about it, then nature is my temple. And if I have nothing with me, I'm still surrounded by the four elements, and I'm still more than capable of doing my magic without physical objects, without one-dimensional paper objects. I can just go out there and conjure, create, and be as badass a witch as I feel like being. So that's all I've got to say on that. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye.